so our sponsors and advertisers be like, yeah, hey, this is great. So
Ladies, you're live.
we're built. Wow, what a great show.
Thank you so much.
It really is. Let me go. I love y'all.
All right, bye.
Have a great show.
Hey. Oh, thanks.
These are for the kids. If you want.
We talked about this with him. It was fine. Similar to the actors. There's some stories that we didn't get. So let's start with your stories first, okay? Happy Saturday, Chicago. You're listening to the Miss ESQUIRE radio show on Urban Broadcast Media. My name is Liz Murray, and I'm your host. I'm not alone today, never alone, because I have my trusty guest co-host, attorney Ellen Duranian. She's back. Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here, Liz.
Yes. You know what? Before I get into everything else, it's just wonderful. This has been a rough beginning of the year for me and probably a whole bunch of other people. So my enthusiasm was waning a little bit.
Yeah.
But now it's getting back up there. So the energy is starting to flow and coming. And then when I have you next to me, of course, there's sunshine in the midst of the rain. So thank you for being the co-host.
Well, thank you for having me.
Because we ran out of time last week, Ellen and I are going to continue our conversation from last week about some of the current news stories. Before we get started with the show, we need to thank our sponsor, the Duranian Law Group. This Chicago-based real estate law firm assists residential and commercial sellers and buyers from contract to closing with no upfront payments. Thank you for your continued support of the show. As always, the Miss ESQUIRE radio show is here to educate, inspire, and entertain you in several areas of the law. So let's dive right into today's show. Last week, we primarily focused on some of the biggest sexual harassment allegations in the news, such as Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and Fox News CEO Roger Ailes. Today, we're going to briefly mention a couple of related stories and then address some others. So I think we had ended off with Corey Haim. Haim? Yes, and Corey Feldman. So Corey Haim was the one who passed. Corey Feldman is still currently in the news, who's holding on. And I remember we were last talking about the issue of whether they kind of, at this point, are complicit. When you know the names and these predators are still out there, but you're not disclosing it, which means they can cause harm to others.
Exactly. And then this week, he came out and named names, or one name.
Who was the one name? Because I heard that, he was still saying, I'm going to name the names. And someone told him, we'll call the police and start naming the names.
Right.
So he actually did name a name.
He named a name on the Dr. Oz show.
What
He
was
had been
the
on, I don't remember the name.
Okay, so we're going to find out the
But
name.
it's an actor who was in, there were a couple of movies that the Coreys were in. I want to say License to Drive or something like that. They were teen movies.
Okay.
And this man was a co-star in those movies.
Oh, really?
And it turns out that he's already been arrested previously for child molestation.
And he's out now?
I believe he's out, yes.
Okay, so we're going to look that one up. We're going to look that issue up. Oh, wait, 22 hours ago. Let's see what CBS News has to say.
Oh, an update.
Update. It's always an update. He's named two men, of course, like you were saying, the Dr. Oz show. He named former co-star John Grissom and showed his photo on air, claiming the man sexually assaulted him in the 80s. Later, he went on Twitter to clarify that the man's name is John Grissom. It's Grissom, with John being Jon, who is another actor. He allegedly called St. Barbara law enforcement because he was told by Dr. Oz to give them a call regard to the allegations, because when it comes to these sexual assaults against children, there is no statute of limitations.
Right.
So I guess he did that. Good. Let's give her a hand. Yes, Corey Feldman, I am glad that you are taking that step. I think we are all glad that you're finally naming the names. We need to know.
We do.
Hollywood needs to know.
The children and the parents need to know.
Yes, we all, yes. So let's see, who is the second person?
Yeah, I didn't know there was another one. And though I agreed with you when you said it, I didn't know that there was no statute of limitations regarding child molestation.
Yep, in some states. I don't know if it's applicable to all states, but I know in some states there is no statutes of limitation when it comes to, sexual crimes against children. Because, of course, when they're a child, more likely than not, it's not reported unless their guardian or their parents report it. So it gives them the opportunity as adults to come forward and name the names of the sexual predator.
And it's indefinite?
I believe so. I believe they're indefinite. Yeah, because I guess with the rationale, and I can look at it more, you know, I'm always like Googling everything. But yeah, because with these sexual crimes, lots of people, because of the shame and humiliation, they don't come forward. So look at him right now. Corey Feldman is just now mentioning this happened many years ago when he was a child.
Right.
So as soon as he was on Dr. Oz told him, call law enforcement now and report the crime, because there's no statute of limitations, to the Santa Barbara Police Department. So in California, I don't believe there is any statute of limitation.
Okay. That's good.
So that was good. So I want to know,
who's the second person?
wait a minute. He said, Feldman continued, this guy on his MySpace page and on his Facebook page has pictures of him and Corey Haim. He still taunts it and flaunts it. Okay, and then Feldman said he wrote about Grissom in his 2013 book, Choreography, but his lawyers made him change Grissom's name. So he had a book that was out there that named someone who had sexually assaulted him, but his attorneys apparently told him not to mention the name. So did those same attorneys tell him to report the actual person?
Why would they tell him not to? It's his own knowledge of.
But you have to remember the Hollywood culture.
Oh,
you understand that? You know what I mean? So the attorneys he may have had knew a lot of those people, and it could have affected them negatively. So they probably didn't want to be involved in that scandal, though it was a child who was offended, which is a sad thing, because you would think that we wouldn't want to help anyone, even if it destroyed our career, maybe.
Right.
I don't see the other name.
Yeah, I didn't know that he had named 2 people.
Well, that was 2 out of the 6. So I mean, and you know, he's trying to have a show and produce a show. So he's trying to raise $10 million to create a feature film that will expose all the pedophiles. So it's just a matter of whether he's going to continue and give the names without producing this show. Because remember, people are still being harmed. And for those people who are just tuning in and are on Facebook, YouTube Live, thank you for tuning in. This is Liz Murray from Miss Esquire here at UBM Radio. And we have Ellen Duranian here, who's also here to discuss some of the sexual assault cases and your rights. So the thing that we're learning is, if you have been the victim of rape or another form of sexual assault, that in some states you're allowed to actually still report the crime to the authority. And we were talking about being complicit. You know what I mean? We don't believe you should be charged with a crime, per se, by knowing information and not disclosing that information. So nowhere should you be charged criminally for a third party's act. But it is important that that you think of yourself first and foremost, but you also think of those people who come behind you who may be subjected to those same things. So the reason that we report is because we want those people to be behind the bars, under the jail cell, and no one will be affected by their crimes. And so many people are coming out. I even posted on my Facebook page where there was a story about a young man who he was charged with a crime here in Illinois, and where he was charged with this crime, he pleaded insanity, so he was committed to mental institution facility, and he was raped. Because we're gonna put it out there instead of being so politically correct. I mean, when somebody makes you engage in sexual conduct without your authority, be it oral or otherwise, that is rape.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
So, with that, this young man, and I have to find the story because I'm always sharing like thousands and thousands of stories on Facebook. So in the meantime, did you have something while I was trying to find the story?
Well, it looks like this is a whole movement, this harassment that's coming out. I see Kevin Spacey. It seems like this could be a career ender for him. I just heard that, he had the young man who said that when he was 14, Spacey had assaulted him in some way. I don't know. I didn't read about it.
Okay.
Read the details. But Netflix is dropping House of Cards, which is his show that he stars in. His publicist has dropped him. Other representation has dropped him. He had a movie he had produced. They're not going to release it. I mean, this is very, very bad for him. And I think another accuser came out against him as well.
Yes, because he's now come out and said he's gay.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was his response.
And I was like, oh, okay,
I'm sorry, but I'm gay.
So you should somehow have an exception to the rule because of your sexual orientation?
Well, I think he's just following in our president's shoes where, something terrible comes out about him and it's always a distraction. It's something else. So it just takes away from your having to take responsibility over what you've done or really address it.
Okay, so there was this actor. His name was Anthony Rapp. He said he attended a party at Spacey's New York apartment in 1986 when he was 14 years old. At the end of the night, an inebriated Spacey picked him up, placed him on a bed, and climbed on top of him, Rapp said. Rapp said the 26-year-old was holding him down, because he was 26 at the time, tightly, but he was able to get away and left the apartment. Rapp said he was inspired to come forward in the wake of the allegations swirling around Harvey Weinstein. Very interesting. So, and then it's this online firestorm because I guess as a result of Spacey saying, oh, I'm gay. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you're 26 at the time. This person is 14. It's rape.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like, now, this may be what we talk about, the sexual assault, where he was preparing to do it and maybe never had the opportunity, and the young man was able to get away.
Right.
But the young man never disclosed it because of the culture and the backlash that he may have received for reporting about Kevin Spacey.
Right.
So as a result, Kevin Spacey has become this
very popular
actor. And his response is, okay, I did it, but I'm gay.
Yeah.
Okay, like this. So now he's being condemned from gay activists and fellow performers.
Because of the timing.
Because of the time and him saying that, kind of using gay as an excuse, it sounds like. It sounds like they're coming out because of the way he presented it. Because Wanda Sykes is coming out against him. Lance Bass is coming out against him, from, what was that, NSYNC?
Yeah.
An actor, Zachary Quinto, are all coming out, as well as some gay rights groups, including GLAAD, as a result of his comments.
So they didn't like the timing of the his
Coming out of the
revelation
Yes.
of coming
Yes,
out finally.
yes. So they're, right, exactly.
Yeah, that
The
probably
young-
was not good timing.
Yeah, I know, you know, it didn't suit him. Why would you come out of the closet after a young man says, you sexually assaulted me?
Mhm.
And it's, yeah, at that time, he should have said, I apologize greatly. Whatever happens to me as a result of me violating this young man, I'm accepting it.
Mhm.
Because I need to make amends. That is what you say, not, oh, I'm gay.
Yeah,
So
Right.
that justifies
I
me
did
messing with
it.
this boy without his permission.
I did it, but I am also gay.
Right.
I mean, that has nothing really to do with it.
Exactly. And then he was 14 years old, so there's no consent. You know what I mean? When you're a
Right.
minor, there is no consent.
Mm-mm.
And we're not gonna play this game that, oh, I was gay, this was a gay young man. No, it was a gay boy. I mean,
Mhm.
not a gay boy. I don't know what the status of the sexual orientation is for the boy.
Mm.
But he was a boy, not a man.
Right.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate.
It is very unfortunate.
So, I know we were saying, we were talking about how the men are now coming out the woodworks. Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's something that.
I told you, Liz, and I will say it to the public, that I want to apologize to the men, because last week when we started talking about this, I said, I don't feel like the men should be jumping in on this and piling on, and, you know, it's mostly women and so on. I think it is still mostly women who are assaulted and raped, but I do acknowledge that it does happen to men, and a man that I know actually was telling me about at work, he's had his female superiors threaten him about work hours and scheduling and so on, and were very, very aggressive and flirtatious. So I think that this does definitely happen more than we think, and
Yes.
it's not gender-based, it's power-based. So the person who is in a position of power, whether it's age or, you know, hierarchy in your profession or
Mhm.
job, some people take advantage of that, and it definitely cuts across gender.
Yes,
So
it
I
does.
apologize, men, for saying you weren't allowed to jump in on this.
And we actually need to be able to jump in on this, because
Mhm.
we need them to be a voice to say it's not okay, right?
Great.
And to say that if they've been subjected, to say that it happened to me and it wasn't okay even when it happened to me.
Right.
So, yeah, but I do agree that, usually and typically in our society, the people who are in positions of power and authority are men.
They are.
So that means that, of course, it seems like it's only common sense that those who would be subjected greatly by it would be women.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I get that point. Yeah, I get that point.
Mhm.
But for those men who are embarrassed about it, because I think Oprah had a show on many years ago about a lot of young men who had been sexually assaulted.
Okay.
Yeah, these young men had been sexually assaulted, and because they had been sexually assaulted, they all came out to tell how they felt, including the fact that they felt the guilt because it felt good. Like, you know, you feel the guilt because that feeling made them feel good. So then they started questioning their sexuality because something that was bad and they knew it was bad actually made them feel good. You know what I mean? Do you understand? So they may have actually had an orgasm. They may have been, somebody may have been performing oral sex on them, and they may have had an orgasm.
Okay.
Because it was a good feeling.
Right.
And as a result thereof, their minds, because they were so young at the time,
Mhm.
felt the shame of it because they knew it was a bad thing. They did not want it. However, their bodies responded, you know, as though it was a good thing. Naturally. So then at that point, they started questioning. You know what I
Okay.
mean? But we're going to go on a short commercial break and then come back with some more stories related to sexual assault. Hey.
Did you want a Kit Kat?
Okay, Kat. I'm like, I'm hungry. We probably get something to eat. Did you eat?
That's loud.
Did you eat?
No.
We can probably
Maybe
get
piece of
something to eat
toast.
after. probably do something to eat.
Oh, we're getting Chinese food.
Oh, that's what you and your mama get?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm about to get the kids something. Mm-hmm. Man, I have to find that case about that young man. We talked about this case, didn't it, Ashley? Alfred versus Aaron Rent.
I think we, touched on that. Yeah, because they reduced the amount, I remember that.
Okay, so we're at this part. So we can start with that. You want to read that one? The second page
Here.
3. Yeah, where we start. Oh, I gotta find my thing on the thing. I forgot I had this one.
What's that?
This Egyptian lawyer, he said raping women is a national duty.
What?
This is funny. This is on, this is conservative lawyer.
In Egypt?
He's like, he blamed women who had been raped in 2005 for their choice of clothing.
That's our culture.
Have you read every case modest and devout women were raped? Have you ever heard a case where somebody who was modest and devout in their dress and in their religion, that they've ever been raped? So there's an Egyptian Council of Women who are filing a complaint against them.
It's about time.
Because the media provides them a platform to encourage.
So ignorant.
Isn't that ignorant? I was trying to find mentally irritating, but so you want to start the Me Too thing? Welcome back to the Miss Esquire radio show on Urban Broadcast Media. Ellen Durrani and I are having a conversation about some of today's top news stories, specifically sexual harassment.
To piggyback on the sexual assault and harassment stories, let's talk about the Me Too campaign. Little do most people know, it actually started a decade ago by an activist, a black woman, named Tarana Burke, to connect survivors of sexual violence. Of course, the hashtag movement began recently by a tweet by actress Alyssa Milano, who was falsely identified as the originator of the hashtag. In response to the movement, Burke tweeted, "It has been amazing watching all of the pushback against Harvey Weinstein and in support of his accusers over the last week. In particular, today I have watched women on social media disclose their stories using the hashtag #MeToo. It made my heart swell to see women using this idea, one that we call empowerment through empathy. The point of the work we've done over the last decade with the Me Too movement is to let women, particularly young women of color, know that they are not alone. It's a movement. It's beyond a hashtag. It's the start of a larger conversation and a movement for radical community healing. Join us."
Yeah. So, you know, this has been something that's been going on, the Me Too campaign. You know, and I know Jane Fonda was talking about, you know, now that white women are starting to talk about experiences of their sexual assault experiences, now it's a conversation. Now it's newsworthy. Now people are embracing it and speaking out, and the men are coming and speaking forward. But this is something that we have been subjected to since the beginning of our presence here in the United States.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, of course, so when the Me Too campaign came out, initially, there was no buzz about it, the hashtag Me Too.
Right.
It didn't get the response that it's currently getting now, which is pretty unfortunate. Why do you think why do you think African American women are not considered victims of sexual assault or perceived to be victims, or why aren't we heard?
Do you think has roots in slavery when?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I think so. Yeah, there was no value on us.
None.
We were property.
Yes.
Some of us could still consider us property. Yeah, you know, I mean, because if you think about it, who was it? Sally Hemings. You know, it was George Washington. Was it Sally Hemings and George Washington? Oh
no,
Thomas Jefferson. Wait.
Yeah.
Wait, I think it was which one was it?
I want to say Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But even when you think about that story, and I thought about this whole, we've been subjected to this. Can you imagine that when that thing, you know, they show it as it was a love affair. You know what I mean? But let's really think about it. Was it truly a love affair? You know, when it initially started, was it something that was voluntarily done? I mean, you know what I mean? Of course, we can't talk to Miss Hemings to ask, was this something where this man swoop a slave off of her feet?
Right.
Or was this because he was in a position of a power? He was the slave owner.
Right. He could do anything he wanted to.
You understand? So it became a love affair because he chose it to be a love affair without her initially maybe even considering it. Now, I'm not saying that slave owners and slaves couldn't love one another.
Right.
I couldn't say that they, you know, that this was something that he did not inherit, you know, because I haven't really studied the history behind it. But I'm wondering, when it initially happened, was it one of those things he raped her? And then, you know what I mean, she, you know, but he realized she was a person too, and then he fell in love with her, and then the victim fell in love with the rapist, and it ended up being a love affair in the end.
I do not know.
Because we didn't have a voice back then, you know what I mean? So you like me, okay? I don't like you.
Right.
But would you tell the slave master you don't like him?
I wouldn't like to hope that she liked it. So it was not like.
So it wasn't forced on her because the story.
Exactly.
Because we don't want to deal with the reality of where we are. That a lot of the things that we do, a lot of the times that we subject ourselves may not be. You know, we want to be in love. We want a love story. We want to know that there's happiness, that people see people for who they are.
Right.
But the reality is, maybe for a lot of us, that is not our reality.
Well, you'd like to think that this woman did not spend her entire adult life being repeatedly raped and abused and just miserable, completely miserable. You would like to hope for her sake that, you know, there was some level of respect and love between the two of them, but I don't know. My guess would be.
It's like if you think of The Color Purple and think of Celie. You understand? With Mister. You know what I mean? It was one of those things that she was able to move about. They were both African American. But it was one of those things that he had the power and authority over her. Right. And she had to be happy. She had to find her happiness. And she may have even loved Mister. Just like Sally Hemings may have even loved Thomas Jefferson. But would that love have actually happened had it not been one of those things where it was a person of authority or power over you? You know what I mean? It's kind of like we assimilate to the behavior.
Make the best of it.
We make the best of it. And you have to think of it. What would happen? You have a better opportunity to love somebody who has something than to love somebody who has nothing. So for a family of Sally Hemings, this is the best you gonna get, girl.
Right.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
With Silly, this is the best you gonna get, girl.
Yep.
You understand? So you look at, this is the best I'm gonna get. So I need to subject myself to this, because it's even spouses, you know, wives who are subjected to sexual assault in their own marriage, who
Right.
have, their husbands have a position of power, of authority over them, and they continue in that pattern of being abused mentally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
But they, what you gonna do?
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, thankfully now you can bring charges against your husband for rape
Yeah.
within the marriage.
Mhm.
So we're moving forward. We acknowledge that. So that's good.
But how far have we gotten when we're still in the point where so many people are exercising power over people, or in the alternative, people's professions have blossomed.
Mm-hmm.
They have got, Kevin Spacey has money.
Mm-hmm.
Weinstein has money.
Right.
Bill Cosby has money.
Yes.
All these people have successful careers, so you can destroy me, put me in jail, but I have retirement, I have my pension, I have whatever it is that I have. You can't take that away.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I mean, yeah, you can file a civil suit, I mean, of course, and get a judgment in a civil case, but depending on the status of the funds, pension,
Mm-hmm.
that is, you can't go after certain things.
Right.
So a lot of these people are up in age, Bill Cosby, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're mentioning this and you're bringing this out, yes, it affects them publicly, but Bill Cosby does not have the Cosby Show anymore.
Right.
He is older, you know, he is retirement age. He is blind now. He has lived a great life. He has traveled, lived, Weinstein the same.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Kevin Spacey's, you know what I mean, he's an older man now. Kevin Spacey has made a career. House of Cards is now saying you're gone, but Kevin Spacey, if he was smart enough and wise enough, which most of them are, they put some money to the side.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just unfortunate. But Me Too, now it's out there. But now you know there's a lady who was behind the campaign, Tarana Burke, who wanted to connect survivors to the sexual violence. And I guess she started, I was looking on the, she now, wait. She's the program director for Brooklyn-based Girls for Gender Equity. It is a goal to empower young women of color. But the seeds for the movement were planted earlier in that, in 1996, when Burke was a youth camp director. And I think this is according to CNN. After an all-girl bonding session, a young girl asked to speak to Burke privately. And I guess when she spoke to Burke privately, that's when she disclosed what had happened about her stepfather, her mother's boyfriend, who was doing all sorts of monstrous things to her development body.
Mm-hmm.
Just horrific.
Right.
Yeah, and I remember a case when I was a young lady, and those who are tuning in, this is UBM Radio, Miss ESQUIRE. It is Liz and Ellen. You know, it's a very sad topic, but, you know, it's something that needs to be talked about. So we're talking about it.
Yes.
But I remember I had an internship, and I had an internship with the DA's office, and I was in the sex crimes. No, I was in the Special Prosecutions Bureau. Okay, which dealt with sex crimes, and the victim was 16 years old at that time, and it was a situation where, because I was an intern, my role, of course, I wasn't before the court like second chairing and you know asking cross-examination questions, but my role was significant. Just it was just as significant. Where my role was to stay with the victim at the time. And what was unfortunate about this whole situation, the young lady was 16. She went to spend the night over to, I believe it was her aunt, and it was her uncle-in-law. She went to spend the night with her cousin. And when she went to spend the night, they fell asleep. They fell asleep in the living room, her and her cousin, on the let-out couch in the living room.
Okay.
So when they fell asleep, they were together.
Mm-hmm.
When she woke up to being raped by her uncle.
Oh, Lord.
What ended up happening is the uncle ended up, you know how you, because no one's paying attention, you know, everybody sleeps. So you know how it's one of those situations where your parent comes out and says, go get in your bed.
Mm-hmm.
But you're so tired, it's the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, you know what I mean, you're like just waking up, but not waking up fully.
Right.
So the cousin, you know what I'm saying, if your father comes and wakes you up, you go to get in your bed.
Right.
Not knowing that the whole movement of that one cousin out of the bed was to rape the cousin in the bed. So as a result of her being raped, she brought it out. She told her family. They reported it to the authorities. He was prosecuted. And the whole family stopped talking to her.
Oh my God.
Yep. So I had to protect her from her family.
Oh,
I had to go to the bathroom with her. I had to sit with her because her family, her cousins, the one she spent the night with, the aunts, all of them blamed all of this on her and basically made her feel as though it did not happen.
What?
Or in the alternative, if it did, we don't disclose our dirty laundry like that. And how dare you do such a thing, and how dare his life be destroyed as a result thereof. So here it is, a 16-year-old girl has to disclose to her family members, to the ones who she loves, who the adults in the family, who is supposed to protect her, all turned against her. So not only was she the victim of being raped, she was also the victim of being harassed by her family members, to the point if they were on the other side of the street and she was on one side of the street, they would taunt her and harass her because she came out to tell her story.
Do you think it was because they were so embarrassed that this would happen within the family?
I think it was just, you know what I'm saying? I think that there is an embarrassment that comes along with it. But I know that at least in the African American culture, for years, you know, people would talk about you don't air your dirty laundry. And I think that's a culture that we have in the African American families. And in the African American families is you don't air your dirty laundry.
Right.
That these are the things that we deal with within a family.
Right.
You don't tell everybody about it because this is the person who makes a living for us. This is the person who does this. So we'll resolve it as a family. So I think that was so with that not airing your dirty laundry, I think comes the embarrassment. So yeah, I think they had that bit of embarrassment, but I think it also was hateful. I think it's just plain evil.
Oh, it was definitely
You know what I'm
hateful.
saying? Like at some point, it's just like
Trying to figure out why the whole family though would turn against the
because that's somebody's
girl.
Because it's that was somebody's husband. Okay. That was somebody's father.
Who's raping people.
Right. But the reality is they don't want to deal with that. If he was the breadwinner in the house, oh, now you destroyed our breadwinner. You understand? You know, that was my daddy. So I guess it was whatever personal feelings they had for this man could not seem to take them out of denial. And instead of hurting him, the person who they had the greater affection for, I'm assuming, they just would hurt her. You know what I mean? The reception is her fault. You know what I mean? It's your fault. You were, I don't know what you did, but it's your fault. You know what I mean? And we can find ways to find fault. We all know that. I mean, I was showing you the Egyptian lawyer on my Facebook who basically said that, you know, he doesn't think that people who are modest in their dress and are devout in their religion are raped. But those who are scantily clad are raped. And he said that it's our fault. So we are in a society who blame it. We always have to justify something. So if I say this person was raped, then I have to go and follow up with, oh, she doesn't have any children out of wedlock. She's never had sex before. I have to justify to let you know that the rape that happened is truly happened because of her past behavior. Yeah.
So I think the implication there also with the Egyptian lawyer is, if you are raped, then that means that you're not devout.
Right.
Because devout women don't get raped.
Exactly.
So we're already condemning any woman who gets raped, and it's obviously her fault because she's not religious enough, right? Is that it?
That's what it is. Yeah.
Wonderful.
On to another commercial break.
Since the Me Too started, and I haven't looked into this, but since the Me Too started 10 years ago, I'm wondering how Alyssa Milano, where'd she dig it up from, and had it been being used, though sparingly, for those 10 years? I'm just kidding.
I wonder.
Because when I saw that it had been 10 years, I'm like, well, what's been going on with it, you know?
Wait. So it's a late Monday, actress Milano credited Burke with creating Me Too and tweeted a link to her organization. The origin story is equal parts heartbreaking and inspiring. Burke says she's happy to see her idea reach. I've seen it happen over and over again in small ways, but to see it happen in mass has been pretty amazing. The challenge now is to figure out how to take it beyond the viral. I think this one, she said that she wants sexual violence or gender-based violence opposed to social justice issues. This has been used 825 times. Because you know, with the Me Too, when you put hashtag Me Too, that means that you are a victim of sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
So people have been doing it. So it has been used 825,000 times. That means the 825,000 people who tweeted it or hashtagged it are considered to be victims of sexual assault.
I read that same story before I left.
Okay.
So you know it's even more now that it's been used.
Yeah, but it doesn't say like, I guess it was coming in waves, but it was never to this degree. So I guess that's how Melissa Milano, I guess she saw it. Because has Melissa Milano been?
Yeah, she did Me Too.
Oh, she.
Right? But I didn't read her story.
Excuse me. Welcome to the island of the misfit lawyers. As you know, we usually feature a lawyer and their passions outside of the law. Today, Ellen and I are going to finish our discussion on some of today's news stories. You know what's so interesting is I have a cold. I have a cold. You have to excuse me. In Chicago. In Chicago, we've had this weather that's been going up and down. It's been cold one day, it's been raining the next day.
Yeah.
So you have to excuse me for the coughs and the hacking and my germs spreading all over the place.
Please not
forgive
today.
us. And we thank you for all those people who are on YouTube Live for tuning in to Urban Broadcast Media and Miss Esquire. So usually we do the misfit section, but I guess we're misfits. We're journalists.
Okay. Oh, I like that. All right.
So we are misfits, and we're still talking about the subject of the Me Too and everything. So the article, and Ellen had read the article, but it was saying that it was like the hashtag Me Too has been used 825,000 times, they have reported. And then the company said that in less than 24 hours, 4.7 million people around the world have engaged in the Me Too conversation, with more than 12 million posts, comments, and reactions. According to Facebook, more than 45% of people in the United States are friends with someone who's posted a message with the words Me Too. And for those people who are tuning in who are unfamiliar with the Me Too campaign, it's basically saying that Me Too, I have been affected by or the victim of sexual assault. So you have ways to deal with this. There's organizations out there that help people. And I'm sorry I did not get a list of organizations here in the city of Chicago, state of Illinois, that assist. But of course, if you Google it, you will find organizations that can provide support. Because for this, it's a big thing. And I think that by it coming out, like Lupita Nyong'o was saying, she says it's starting to take away the secrecy or the secrecy of of not revealing. So I think that now for each of you, if you're watching, if you're listening, that if you are a victim of sexual assault, that you can know that there are safe spaces now, and there's
Yes.
places that people are talking about it, and that you have the support. We're here for you, and everything. So with the Me Too campaign, those people who have been affected, they're coming out publicly and saying Me Too.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, you know, because I almost got a little. I almost put Me Too until, you know, until I realized, you know what I mean, it's nothing to be taken light. At first I was doing Me Too, like thinking to myself that Me Too, I'm a supporter of those people who have been victims. Not realizing that hashtag Me Too means I have been directly impacted.
Right.
Gratefully,
I'm designating myself as
being
a survivor of assault or
I think
harassment.
that's, and you know what, that is so beautiful the way you say that, survivor of assault.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, because I want you to know that you are survivors. I'm not going to say victims anymore. If you made it this far, you are a survivor. If you're still alive and well, you're a survivor. So that is perfect. Oh, I love that, Ellen.
Well,
Because I've been saying victims, and you know, it sounds so like, you know what I mean, they haven't overcome. You've overcome if you're still in the land of the living, and you're still able to function somewhat, despite what happened to you.
somewhat is right, too.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I use the term victim sometimes, too, and sometimes that's how it feels. But a lot of times it does feel like you've survived it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. So survival. So
Me too, Liz.
Really, you too?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
I was very young, and it wasn't anybody that, excuse me, it wasn't a family member, or it was strangers, but yeah.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
it does, thank you, but it does, it stays with you.
It does.
It does.
Yeah, it does. So yeah, so you're not on Facebook, so you can't do hashtag Me Too. I guess you need a Twitter, Facebook or Twitter or Instagram account.
I'm on Twitter, though.
Oh yeah, did you do the hashtag Me Too?
I think I did, because I did respond to, I was reading some of the Me Too
Okay. You know,
comments.
and just to ask you, and you don't have to answer.
Mhm.
After it happened, did you feel, being so young, safe enough to tell someone?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Did anything ever happen to those adults? Do you know?
No,
Nothing happened?
no.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Didn't know who they were. They weren't adults, they were teenagers.
They were teenagers. Okay. Now I do remember a time, and you know, I mean, I guess you brush things off, but I remember a time when my aunt, this was in Cabrini Green, and I was walking, me and my cousins, a little cousin, and there were a group of young teenagers, you know what I'm saying? I was probably 12, preteen or 12, and I remember it had to be cold because I had a coat on. And I remember one of the young men grabbing me, like I would do something to you, you know what I mean? But something happened and it didn't happen. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because it was broad, I think it was even broad daylight. So I guess, you know what I mean? I don't want to be like hashtag Me Too to try to find things to put me into Me Too. But I can see where, you know, even the teenagers can, you know, you would think they would know better, but I guess not as well. Yeah. So I'm really sorry about that. On the subject of Harvey Weinstein and others coming out accused of sexual harassment, famed actress Jane Fonda spoke out recently, which we were talking about earlier, to basically remind people of how America treats black women. While on MSNBC's All In with Chris Hayes, Jane Fonda said, "It feels like something has shifted. It's too bad that it's probably because so many of the women that were assaulted by Harvey Weinstein are famous and white and everybody knows them. This has been going on a long time to black women and other women of color, and it doesn't get out quite the same. There were more than 60 Weinstein accusers, but once Lupita Nyong'o, who is a black actress, told her story of sexual harassment in the New York Times, it was publicly refuted, compared to the majority white famous actresses. Gloria Steinem was also a guest on the MSNBC show and noted the lack of media coverage on the R. Kelly story regarding the abuse and control of the singer's female companions. So I know we didn't even talk about that.
No.
But do you know that story? That there are families who are coming out who are saying that though their daughters may be adults, that they are under the control of R. Kelly and he is using them as sex slaves.
Yeah, I was reading something about that kind of a mind control,
Mm-hmm.
because the women themselves, or at least one woman who was mind controlled, was saying, "Oh no, there's nothing wrong. It's all good." Is that the story you're talking about? 'Cause
Yeah.
I heard about it one time, and that was it.
Yeah, and then it was, and I think there was a young lady who actually, with that, actually was able to get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
I have to
Well, I
find it.
think that she was telling, what I was reading about is the woman in question, the family was alarmed. They're like, we can't talk to her, there's something wrong. Then the woman herself came out through public media, or, Twitter or Facebook or whatever, social media, and was like, I'm fine, I'm good, don't worry about me. But again, the family was like, well, if everything's good, why can't we see you?
Mm-hmm.
So then I think they started speculating about some kind of mind control over this woman and possibly other women. And yeah, they're stashed in like houses,
Right.
scattered around. It sounded a little bit crazy,
Right.
but you just never know what people are capable of.
And you know what? And with this as well is when they're grown and they're consenting.
Yeah.
And they say, I'm okay, there is nothing that as a family member we can do. They're no longer children. They're no longer minors. If there's something happening to someone who is an adult,
Mm-hmm.
they have to speak out for themselves.
Right.
You have to speak out for yourself. So if the young lady says there's nothing happening,
Yeah.
the police went to visit, the police said there's nothing happening, then we can only assume that there's nothing happening until somebody steps forward and says, you know what, this is actually happening.
Yeah.
So we'll follow that up to see, because it's not okay for anyone to misuse somebody
No.
and use them, to control their mind in order to abuse them.
Mhm.
And of course, when you have money and
Mhm.
fame,
Right.
like R. Kelly has, and these young women tend to see it and see the lifestyle that they could possibly live, sometimes they will subject themselves. We will allow ourselves to be controlled
Mhm.
in order for us to be well off financially or to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So we just have to all be careful. But we're coming to the end of the show. This has been a very good show.
That was
And
quick.
please, it goes by so fast when you're having fun.
Yep.
We love doing this show. It
Mhm.
does something. It speaks to our soul, because that's what we are. We're advocates. We're attorneys. But we want to take care of people and make sure that they're okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, our time is up for today. Thank you to my guest co-host, Ellen Duranian, for sharing your opinion on the stories we covered today. A special thank you to our producer, Kelly Fox, and UBM engineer, shout out, Alvin, for all you do to ensure the success of the show. As always, thank you for listening to the Miss Esquire radio show on Urban Broadcast Media. Be sure to like the show on Facebook. We need some likes. Come on, people. Like. And follow us on Twitter. And visit the MissEsquire.net website. If you'd like to be a guest or a sponsor, please leave a note on MissEsquire.net or on the Miss Esquire Radio Show Facebook page. Enjoy your weekend, Chicago. Next time, stay warm.
Bye.
Bye. Say bye, Ellen.
Bye.